Hello and welcome to Resilient Founders, our series where we invite experienced entrepreneurs, part of the LBS community, to share their stories and learnings. I am Gary Dushnitsky, and I'm very proud to have with us today an LBS alumnus, a mentor in residence, and a successful entrepreneur, Dan Ziv.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Dan, maybe you can start us off by telling us a little bit about the history. What is the journey that you've been up to in the past?
I started my career as an M&A lawyer, and I came to LBS in 2012 to embark on my MBA, thinking I would have several opportunities. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to get into. I ended up actually founding a company called Uncover, which was a last-minute booking app for high-end restaurants, which I actually founded with two of my fellow alumni from LBS, from my class, Chris Steiner and David Sands. We started the venture during our second year of LBS and then graduated right into the venture. About a year and a half later, we sold that, and then each one went to our separate ways. And I joined a company called TouchNote. This was 4 years ago. I joined as a chief product officer. TouchNote was not a startup in the sense that we founded it. It was very much in its early days. And I started as a chief product officer, moved on to become managing director of the UK, and became CEO just about a year ago.
Can you tell us maybe a little bit about the company? That's just for us to get a sense of what the company is doing and what is your main value proposition.
TouchNote is a creative platform for personal communication. We allow you to send personalized cards and other products from your phone using your own pictures.
Part of the reason we are here today is because of the reality we are all facing. COVID-19 is present and it's affecting all walks of life and business as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how did TouchNote face this challenge?
I think it's quite interesting to see that there are some industries that have really taken off and propelled, and then some of which, of course, have died down or have very much stalled. Now, if you think of the high street and the hardship that the main street or high street are now experiencing, a lot of that activity is actually funneled online in our industry, which is the card industry. That's no exception. What we find is that when people would go to the high street perhaps to buy a card, a lot of that activity is now actually funneled online. And that's why online or pure play internet companies like ours are actually having a great moment right now. This means that we have other challenges such as rapid scaling, hyper growth, and we need to make sure that we can absolutely fulfill for every customer. The other challenge that companies such as us face is that we are a hybrid between a digital and a physical company. And as such, we have to make sure that we have resilience in our pipeline. So you can think of our printers that we have all around the world, and we are heavily reliant on the postal offices everywhere in the world as well. So there's quite a lot of logistics in this, and to make sure that all of that is still humming while a global pandemic like this is going through its course is quite a challenge.
You've mentioned that in a way, this is a very opportune time for you. You're actually seeing growth in business. Can you walk us through what is the value add? What kind of customers? What is it that customers are telling you? Where do you see the uptake in terms of the customer use case, maybe new types of customers? A little bit about the demand as you see it right now.
Absolutely. I think what's so interesting about this time, and obviously it's a time of hardship and a time of distress for so many people, and we are very empathetic to that. But from a business perspective, what is so interesting about this time is that consumers and the audience at large has changed their behavior. So we went from a world of waking up in the morning, taking the kids to school, commuting, and working in an office for 8 hours, to the entire family staying in the same building or in the same house, where work and life and everything else is very much compartmentalized to the same space. That has fundamentally changed behavior. It's changed our viewership of streaming services. It's changed the way we use chat. It changed the way you use social media. I think the challenge is really to understand how the customer has changed their behavior as a result of COVID and restrictions and lockdowns and everything we're seeing globally, and then react to that to make sure that you can take a valuable part in that customer's life as if they are living it right now. I think that was where the opportunity is, and that's where the challenge is right now.
You've mentioned now that as you're experiencing this growth in the demand, there's the realities of scaling up. And scaling up is a little bit like adolescence. It's never easy. There's always difficulties associated with that, let alone doing that in a world where our routines, the way we even encounter our own personal life is very, very different. I was curious whether you can tell us, what does it mean to lead a company that is experiencing this scale up, this rapid scale up, and doing it all remotely?
All of our employees have been working obviously remotely and from home, as well as all of our printing facilities are mostly remote. And we have had to move from being 100% on site, at least the core team of technologists that are building this thing, to being entirely remote. And that brought its own set of challenges into the business to understand how we can manage productively our time and our scale. But then when we saw this rapid scale and rapid growth come in, suddenly other issues came up. We needed more customer support reps. We needed to make sure we have enough paper, right? Ultimately, we need paper to print these cards. And we needed to make sure that our back-end infrastructure can actually hold 10x and 20x volume. Mind you that there is a global shortage in bandwidth and capacity right now because everyone is online in Zoom, just like we are right now recording this. Other people are having their meetings as well. So we had to make sure that our infrastructure can suddenly meet these demands as well. So there's quite a lot. And to be honest, I think it's throughout the value chain. What you have to do is you cut the different parts of your value chain and you try to understand where you are most vulnerable. And then you try to find contingencies and safeguards for those vulnerabilities. And they come in the most unexpected places. I mean, you could say that suddenly your website might go down because traffic to WordPress is suddenly spiking, which is completely external to your own capabilities. But then what is your fallback and how can you play around with that? So that's, I think, some of the uncertainty and challenge of this time.
It sounds you've got quite a few notches on your belt over the last few weeks. Maybe I can just ask you to share with us one moment where you said, I'm really proud of this team. We all have slightly longer hairs these days. You put your hands through your hair and thought to yourself, you know what, this can be a life or death moment for companies. I don't know if you can share maybe one or two of these moments with us.
I can think of two specific moments where I was extremely proud of the team. So the first is when we moved to be fully remote. So that's one of those experiences that you don't plan for and you don't have contingencies for. It just kind of happens. And now you're relying on the team and the culture to really continue over time. And one of the things I've been continuously proud of our team is the level of engagement and work and involvement that they have with the service. So our productivity, I believe, has gone up since we went fully remote. People have been engaged. And also a moment where I was pulling my hair out. Well, I have to say that one of the issues that we have seen, I think, escalate is the fact that I think global infrastructure is very much in a place where it is teetering on the brink of instability. Unfortunately, in our business, you don't have a contingency plan for the internet. So we are, I think, more than ever before in a situation where we're feeling slightly like we are not in complete control of our own stability. And we have to make sure, of course, we have as many safeguards as possible, but at least twice or three times over the past month, we have seen rocky ground and said, wait a second, what's actually happening? I hope the internet won't go down in a certain country because of the massive volumes we're seeing.
Thank you for sharing that. And I suspect that this is a piece of reality that many of the founders, LBS community and beyond will very much resonate and empathize with, which in a way leads me to the next question I wanted to touch on, which is these are challenging times. Leading a company in and by itself can be quite taxing on oneself, let alone when you are changing your surrounding. There's no real break between life and work. Everybody in your team is experiencing these challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about your own personal journey?
I think this has been a time of huge distress for people, and myself included. So like many LBS alumni and students, I live in London, but my family, my extended family rather, is in my home country of Israel. And I had to make a decision quite early on, as it was uncertain whether flights are going to continue and what kind of disruptions we're going to be seeing. Where should I be situated during this time? And while luckily, and touch wood, my family has been fine, and my partner's family has not suffered from the virus yet. We were very distressed that perhaps we will stay in London while our families are in Israel, and we will be further away when they need us most. But that did not coincide with the fact that I have a company to run, and there's a lot of work, and this is only escalating, and there's clearly long hours here right now. Luckily, when we moved to remote working, then where I would be in the world isn't as important, and I could essentially log in anytime, anywhere. So I quickly decided, together with my partner, to move back home to Israel and to be close to the family in case anything happens.
Glad to hear that things have fallen into place in a positive way. Maybe just conclude with one last question. You have been very generous with the LBS community, speaking to students I know in my classes and others, serving as a mentor in residence, and so on and so forth. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about just where does the LBS community, either experiences and learnings you've had in the past or the community at large, has helped you in navigating these challenging times?
Yes, certainly. So I'm, as you know, Gary, I'm a huge fan of LBS, and I'm so grateful for everything that the school has done for myself and my growth. So I try to give whatever amount back as I can. I think that the beauty of what we learned at school was that change is such a normal factor of managing a business like this. I remember a specific course, I think it was called Managing Change by a professor called Raina Brand. And that entire course was about managing change in people and people management, as well as in the organization. And that's the kind of course that you go to, and you don't necessarily understand how relevant these things are going to be 5 or 6 or 10 years later when you are dealing with a global pandemic, or when you're dealing with other. And I find myself going back, I know it sounds funny, but I find myself going back sometimes to that book we read in that course to reread some of the frameworks and knowledge, because I feel that there's so much in that can be implemented in different times and different challenges that we have. So it's not so much that I had specific insights, it's more I had frameworks of thought that go back to like a great library, I think, of knowledge to then implement if and when we need to implement it.
This is great, and it's great to see that the LBS experience has continued living with you and supporting what you have done. Thank you very much, Dan, and I look forward to hearing the future successes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gary.